So as promised, I'm going to talk about my mother wound. I wanted to put this in a separate video because there's just so much information about it, and I wanted the people who are interested in understanding their own healing and what it looks like and symptoms to have that. And if you're interested in hearing this, then you can watch this video. My name is Crystal Hoban, aka Crystal Clear Mystic. And I have been healing through my mother wound for a long time. I think I'm finally really close to the other side of it at this point in time, which feels really good and was a really hard, long journey, to be honest. But partially why I think I can even talk about it. One of the things that I keep, hearing from my spirit team is that shame dies as soon as you tell your story. And so I have been trying to kind of kill the shame. Secrecy keeps shame alive, right? I'm not here to feel shameful anymore. There's nothing shameful about my past or my experience or anything that happened to me. Actually, everything that happened in my life has made me who I am today. And that is absolutely beautiful. And I'm so grateful for who I am today. And I'm so grateful for how strong I've become. And I am so grateful for my ability to overcome these obstacles so that I can help other people do that. So I don't feel shameful about this. This is just a part of my story, and this is something that I just had to learn to overcome. So, mother wounds, right? I think if you watch my other video, I talked about how you end up in relationships that kind of mirror these wounds. And so, growing up, my mom was not the most emotionally available person. She was very logical. And, she didn't have the best relationship with her mother. And I found that out a lot later in my life, to be honest with you. That wasn't something I was completely aware of when I was younger. And what she would tell herself is that, everything was great. Everything was great and okay. And I realized that that was a story that she was telling herself so that she could feel good about her own life and experience and not have to go in there and do the work. And the reality is not everybody has to do the work, right? That's a choice, and I just choose to heal. But my mom really wasn't very present, and a lot of the time she put me down for wanting to do certain things. The way that I thought about certain things, she put me down about. She really didn't understand how I wanted and dreamed of these big things and how I was ever going to accomplish them. And, I realized a lot later in my life that really it wasn't that I was dreaming too big. It was that she couldn't see herself doing those things, and me reaching those goals or reaching those accomplishments, right, would cause her to have to look at herself and ask herself why she didn't, right? Or why she gave up or whatever. And this is true with people across the board, right? When you start to excel and do better and reach these huge goals that you've been wanting for a long time, then you have to realize that it challenges the people around you, because it makes them have to look at themselves and say, are they okay with this? And some may be, and that's not my journey to judge. But someone's opinion or feeling about that has nothing to do with me. But when you're a kid, right, you take on mom's word like it's real, it's true, right? So, growing up, I felt I wasn't good enough. There was always something wrong with me. The way that I dreamed was too big. What I wanted for my life was too much. I was too artistic in certain ways, right? She pinned me and my siblings against each other a lot growing up. And I think it was a control kind of thing in the house in some ways, because we were really, really close, trauma bonded close, if I'm being honest. And I think that was a threat to her in some ways. It was kind of she would always say no one's my favorite, which if that were true, then why are you saying it, right? I think that's something she wanted to believe that she was being honest about, right? But I don't think so. As I got older, I realized that I didn't feel safe in my house. I mean, not only was there emotional abuse and psychological abuse going on in my home, but there was also physical abuse going on in my home. And I was really the target of it in some ways. And that was really hard to overcome. That was really hard to like face. Like when you are the one who's experiencing that in a home of, there's two other kids in the house and you're the one experiencing that, like, what the actual F is wrong with me? Like, why am I the constant target? Why am I constantly the problem, right? You believe that you're the problem, you're the scapegoat, you're the issue, right? And I carried that for many, many, many years. And it caused me to be super rebellious. And, it's interesting because I realized a lot later in my life how harmful a lot of these things were. And also just like the way she put me down all the time, the way she like spoke to me, right? The way that she treated all of us differently. And it really did. It made me feel like I wasn't lovable. There was something wrong with me. I had to do all these things to make people feel good. So I would hold all of mommy's feelings. And I would always like be the one to check in on mom and make sure she's okay and try to make her feel better, right? Because I was trying to be the good kid instead of the problem kid. And, it took me until my adult life and honestly becoming a therapist and doing all of that background work and education to really understand what the hell was going on. As I got older, I started to realize what was happening and I started to try to set boundaries in that relationship. It did not go over well. And they were seen as bad, really. She pretty much told me that we, as a family, you put up with things and you shove it under the rug. You don't talk about things. And if anybody has known me or knows me, you know that I am not that one. As I've gotten older and I've come into myself and started to love myself and truly like love who I am and trust myself, I do not shove things under the rug. I am not somebody who does that. I don't believe in that. If there's an issue, be very direct with me. And I've always been that way with friends and stuff like that. But when it came to family relationships, it felt really, really difficult and kind of scary, to be honest. When there's physical abuse in a home, there's this fear of like making somebody angry. And I've noticed how that kind of bled into my life in so many different areas and having to heal that and recognize that I'm not that little kid anymore and I can protect myself now, right? So much healing had to come through that. But there came a point in time where, I started really seeing things for what they were. She was talking down to me. She was making me feel bad. It was like every time I would go home and visit her, I would come back from the house and come back to my home and I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't shower. I couldn't eat. Like I was going into this really crazy survival space and I was completely dissociated. And when I would go there, I would drink excessively. And I don't drink anymore at all. Like, I am not a big drinker. I've never really been a big drinker. I mean, obviously when I'm young, like young teens, right? Or college. But outside of that, not really. And I just like could not help myself. I could not help myself. And those were like the signals and the signs that I started to realize like something's wrong. Something is wrong. And when I would come home, I wouldn't be able to shower, eat, or like go back to normal life for about 3 days in a row. I would go into this complete freeze response. And it was like this wake up call. Like, you can't keep doing this to yourself, Crystal. This is not good. So I kind of hit a wall. I want to say it was about 2 years ago, around this time. About 2 years ago. And I started clenching my teeth again. So I've done that over the course of my life at different points in time when I was super, super stressed. And, I started clenching my teeth again and I went to the dentist and I told her what was going on. And she's like, well, I think you're stressed. You're clenching your teeth. That's what's happening. Like this and that. Something's not right, right? And this was between Thanksgiving and Christmas of the last Christmas I spent with my family and my parents. And I ended up going to the Christmas and I realize that like my body's having all of these somatic responses. Like I am obviously zoned out, dissociated, not doing well when I'm coming home from these experiences. Like something is wrong. Big red flag. Something is wrong. No matter how much I want to love my family and love my parents and love them, this is not good for me. And I need to choose me. I need to make the choice to take care of myself. And so I ended up going home for that Christmas. It ended up being a huge blowout. And they promised me that, well, my stepdad promised me that we were going to go to family therapy, and then never followed up, because this is kind of like this cycle of what happens, right? We say we're going to do something, then we don't do it. We're expected to roll it under the rug. So after that situation, I reached out about family therapy. There was no response. I ended the relationship. And it was so difficult to end that relationship because I felt so much guilt. And this was not something you did in my family. It was something that was like frowned upon, and you were bad if you did that. And so I ended up having to try to learn through and live through the grief and how to resolve it. And I felt like the worst person in the world. I was always the problem. This just kind of kept playing out as me being the problem. I struggled for probably about 8 months to a year, I want to say, like trying to wrap my head around what happened, trying to talk myself down from it, trying to like be okay with it, like, and find a way to like love myself more than them, right? And understand that this was something that I needed. But having family around you that also, you know, these kinds of dynamics, everybody lives in them, and most people just accept them. I wasn't, right? So everybody's like shaming me for it, making me feel bad for it. Well, you're just this way, you're just that way, you're expecting something that you shouldn't be expecting, right? All these things. And so that didn't help. And at this point in time, you know, we're 2 years later. I don't talk to any of my family that's not supportive of me in this anymore. I had to completely disconnect from them. They weren't able to really like be able to support me in this decision, and also respect my boundaries around this decision. So I ended up disconnecting from all of them. I do have a couple of family members that I still keep in contact with and still support me. And we, you know, I can say straight to them, like, I don't want to talk about this. Can we please change the subject? And there's a lot of respect around that. But, you know, it took a little while to get here, not gonna lie. I do think, though, it's been interesting because that ending of the relationship, I had like a clairvoyant knowing, and this is before I understood what clairvoyance was, and that I was, or an empath. You know, I had this clairvoyant knowing that like she was blocking me from the life that I wanted to live. That my relationship with her was like keeping me from being able to have the life I wanted. And so I ended up, you know, walking away from that relationship and like really being with myself for a while, and realizing that like what I was accepting in that family relationship and dynamic with my parents was also something that I was accepting in many relationships in my life. And so as I disconnected from that relationship, I was able to start setting boundaries more. I was able to start speaking my truth more. I was able to start standing up for myself more. I was able to like have like more of a voice. And a lot of relationships fell apart after that. And I think that this was all kind of needed to happen, to be honest, because I created this life around this identity that I just didn't exist in anymore. And so if I wanted to change that identity, that meant I also had to change the people around me and what I was putting up with and accepting. So, you know, it's interesting to me too, because that clairvoyant knowing I had about like needing to leave that relationship behind for me to have the life that I wanted, was also the year before I had my psychic and spiritual awakening. And I don't think that was an accident. You know, once I finally disconnected from that relationship, the guilt started to go away and the lights turned on when I said that. So I think it was very much divinely guided. And I understand it as that now. I did not before. But as I, you know, moved away from that relationship, as I closed off the door for that relationship, I let it go. I, you know, started to realize that, I was feeling safer. I felt more comfortable in my body. I started feeling happier for the first time in my life. I started feeling like a lot more joy. You know, all of these things started coming back to me that I had not felt since I was really, 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 really young. And even when I was young, it was like little spurts of it. But it was kind of like I was coming back to who I truly was. I was remembering. And, you know, at this point in time, I don't regret my decision. Actually, I think it's exactly what needed to happen. And I'm not saying that this will be the way that it is forever, but this is the way that it needs to be right now. I do love my siblings and my parents, and yet. I need to take care of myself and love myself more, and that means me kind of being distant from them, right? And that doesn't change how much I love them. I don't need to be in their life 100% of the time to love them. That doesn't really go away. But the way that I like move through my life has completely changed at this point. And maybe one day, I will be able to be around them and not feel triggered. But that day is not today. And, we'll see. I'm not completely closed off to it. And I understand some people that do completely close themselves off to it. And to be honest with you, for a long time, I was completely closed off to it. I've only become open to it over the last couple of months because I've really started to be very solid in myself, and I don't get triggered as often. Or when I do, I realize what it is right away and I immediately take care of it. So I trust myself to be okay. But it took a lot of healing and building and all of those things to get to this point. That wasn't something that happened overnight. So, I guess I want to share my story first off because fuck that shame. No one should feel shame for what you were born into, what you grew up in, especially as a child. What you grew up in when you were a kid, you were stuck in. It was something that you had to learn how to live through and survive through. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. And that experience and overcoming that experience is just so beautiful. And it takes so much strength. And it takes so much power to be able to do that. And what I have to say is, don't be ashamed of where you came from. It made you into who you are today. And you get to decide how that forges your future, right? One of the things that I always really feel very strong about is I'm that phoenix. I was burnt to a crisp, my awakening, and I rose from the ashes. And at this point in time, the people that knew me back then in those ways that I was, right, they wouldn't even recognize me now. They don't even know who I am now. To be honest with you, I'm still getting to know myself. And it's an absolutely beautiful thing. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do with it. I hope that this gives someone else the strength to be able to tell their own story, to be able to see themselves differently. Because there's nothing wrong with you. As a child, we're stuck in certain situations and we got to learn how to overcome them. And that's it. Nothing else, that's it. So I do help people do this. If you're interested, you can look at my link in my bio for, some support and coaching and things around this. But you got this. Keep going. You deserve everything that you provide to other people. Love and light.